I'd like to call to order the May 22, 2023 Ravenna School District Board of Education Business Meeting. Roll call.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Here.
Mrs. Dennison?
Here.
Mrs. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Here. I'd like to introduce our student board members of the month, Trinity Dunch and Terrell Strickland. We can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can have a moment of silence, please. Any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, if you go all the way to the back where we have, it's number 11, D11 on page 11, you need to remove, Dylan Harper's name was removed from additional 2-year contracts due to a resignation. So it was just a removal of a name. It doesn't change any of the actual business.
Approval of the agenda? If I can have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes. Recognition of the public on agenda items.
We have none.
Next is the Game Changer Awards.
All right, it's the last Game Changer Awards for the year. If we could have the adults line up first, followed by the students from pre-K up over by Mr. Rivelin, and if the board would go up to the stage and get ready to hear all this great stuff about our Game Changers. You're just going to go over there and Mr. Wait, right, yep. All right, we're going to go ahead and start with the adults. And first, we're going to start with Ravenna High School, paraprofessional Deanna Krause. Deanna, come on across. Mrs. Krause has helped the RISE students transition successfully this school year and continues to be a supportive role in the classroom as she encourages growth but holds students accountable as we raise expectations. She has worked for the schools for many years but continues to evolve as the district's needs change, and every student in her class loves her. Congratulations, Mrs. Krause. Next, from Brown Middle School, intervention specialist Jessica Edwards. Mrs. Edwards is a loving and calm strength at Brown. Her kind voice works magic with her students. They love her. Unlike typical MD classrooms, Jessica finds a way to get her students out into the school. She finds ways to shout, like in the Dr. Seuss classic, Horton Hears a Who, "We are here, we are here." She creates authentic experiences for her students that give them life skills and a sense of ownership. Staff enjoy her coffee shop, the students' coffee shop each morning. She's active in local theater, and now she's incorporating her talents to include her students. Jessica also initiated staffs to send nice notes to one another so her students could deliver them each week. Her love and dedication to her students, her professionalism and positive outlook is infectious. I am lucky to call her my colleague and friend, and that was from multiple nominations. Congratulations, Jessica Edwards. All right, and now from the preschool, we have Shia Patterson. Shia has grown so much this school year. She has really started demonstrating her understanding of being safe and kind and responsible. We are all so proud of Shia. Congratulations, Shia. She wanted a bump there. All right, and now from West Park, we have Karen Taylor. Karen has learned so much this year. She's getting really good at reading and blending her words together. She knows all the tricky words taught so far. Karen also likes to draw pictures in her free time. She's a very good artist, and she likes to give her artwork to Mrs. Stanfield and other teachers in the school. Karen is a very kind and generous person. She's a good friend to others, a great role model to her peers. She is always respectful, responsible, and in control. Congratulations, Karen. Next, from the first grade, we have Mason Kern. I like the tie, Mason. Mason is a true game changer. Mason always comes to school with a positive attitude and is excited to learn about everything. When he sees others that are in need, he is always there to encourage, share, and support his friends. He's always respectful, responsible, and in control, a true role model. Congratulations, Mason Kern. All right, moving on up to the fourth grade, we have Keegan Kelly. Keegan is a hard worker that always strives to do his best. He's a student that loves challenges, especially in STEM, and no matter how difficult the challenge, he never gives up. Keegan thrives on trying to push himself to learn as much as he can about any subject. He's a great citizen in the classroom. He's always willing to help others in any way that he can, and he always talks to everyone as a friend. We're very proud of Keegan and his thoughtfulness towards others. Congratulations, Keegan Kelly. Next, from Brown Middle School in the 5th grade, we have Luz del Val Acosta. Luz is a wonderful role model, student, and friend. She's a very hard worker, always has a smile on her face, and she is so kind and caring to others. Every morning, you can count on getting a big hug from Luz. She helps everyone have a great start to the day. She's an excellent role model, and she's always respectful, responsible, and in control. BMS is so proud to recommend her as the May Student Game Changer. Congratulations. Finally, from the high school, and with multiple nominations, we have Marcellus Ward, 9th grade. Marcellus has shown a complete turnaround from the beginning of the year. He's improved everything, including that means his grades are rising. He's very polite, very respectful. We can't wait to watch him continue to grow. He's been showing leadership skills in English 9 with his peers. He supplies them with materials and works well in collaborative settings. He has shown so much growth. He's kind, respectful, which is very hard to come by in a young person. He's a hard worker. He's even assisted the custodians in setting up tables one day, and Mr. Harper remarked about this extremely strong work ethic. It's been exciting to watch him bloom, and we're confident this growth will continue throughout his high school career. He enters every class ready to work. He's eager to start. He's eager to do everything perfectly. Ms. Chrislip and he have been working on all his missing assignments, and he's going to be ready to be out the door done with everything. Congratulations, Marcellus. And now, if you don't mind, we're going to go out to the cafeteria. We're going to take some pictures of the game changers, the adult game changers, and the student board members, and then we'll just come right back and start the meeting. And if you're not part of the meeting, that's when you all get to,
Treasurer update?
Yes, I'm ready. Thanks to Rick Seckman, I'm all queued up. Thank you. This evening, we have the presentation of the five-year forecast for the board's recommendation during the treasurer reports for approval. But in the meantime, for my update, I would like to present the following slides of information. Each board member also received a copy of the five-year forecast chart and a copy of the notes and assumptions that go into preparing the five-year forecast. And I gave you a copy of the slides in case you can see them better on the paper than on the screen. The other thing that I attached to your packet of information this evening was a copy of the five-year forecast slightly modified to show what what additional levy revenue would have done to the bottom line on the five-year forecast. So I'll address that during the presentation. But this is the May update to the fiscal year 2023 five-year forecast. And Rick has shown me how to do this before. I apologize. It does. First, I'm obligated to explain that the five-year forecast is prepared twice a year in October, and then again it's updated in May. This is because the state requires school districts and the administration to engage the school board and the community in the long-range planning and discussions of fiscal issues facing the school district. So this also serves as a basis for determining the district's ability to enter into contracts, including employment contracts and collective bargaining agreements. And finally, it provides a method for the state of Ohio and the Ohio Department of Education and the Auditor of State to identify districts with potential financial problems. The five-year forecast, again, was prepared in October, and it's being updated now with additional information that we've learned during fiscal 2023. Our fiscal year ends June 30th, so as of tonight, we have some additional information that we know we have a better picture of how fiscal 23 looks. So what I prepared for you was a modification of a slide that I originally gave you that summarizes the five-year forecast. And this slide really shows you what we assumed we would have in October, and then in bold right below it, updated May 2023, what we have today, or what our assumption has been revised to at this point. As you can tell, the revenue for this year has been updated, and we received slightly more revenue than anticipated, and we still have about a month of this fiscal year to go. So we will, of course, make that adjustment at fiscal year end, and then you'll see actual numbers for fiscal 23 in the October forecast for fiscal 24. But it looks like we've come in a little bit higher on revenues for this year than we anticipated. Some categories were higher, some were lower. Our property tax and our state aid are our two biggest items in our revenue, and they came in about where we projected. So really the variance has been in some other local sources. For fiscals 24, 25, 26, 27, we've kept the same assumptions because nothing has changed since we made the original assumptions in October. There's been no change to our property tax rate collection, and there's been no legislation yet that has changed what our assumption for state aid will be next year. We are awaiting the changes to the budget bill this year, and those should be coming in the next month. And again, you see those reflected in October. As far as expenditures, again, we've updated them based on assumptions of where we will be at the end of this fiscal year. So a little bit higher than we initially projected, but we're keeping a control on that. We're following salaries and benefits, and we're tightening up on our contracts and any additional expenses at buildings between now and the end of the school year, obviously in about a week. So we're at the point now where we're wrapping up, and we'll probably be closing some unpaid orders, anything that was back ordered, we'll be reviewing, and we'll see where those are. So that's just our assumption of where we will be at the end of the fiscal year. We've made some modifications going forward in 24, 25, 26, 27 to expenditures. Again, we've taken some action on some staffing reductions, and those are reflected in there. We have some better information about our benefit rates for next year, and those are also reflected in there. So you see an update then to our over-under. So we will have received more revenue than we spent this year. And initially, we were anticipating to begin deficit spending again next year, but because of some reductions in staffing for next year, we've resolved that deficit spending for next year. And then as you see that projected in the out years, it does change, it continues to change our deficit spending as we move forward. That has an impact on our cash balance. We knew we would end a positive cash balance this year. We are still on track to end with a positive cash balance this year, and next year and in fiscal 25. With the reduction in staffing and those projections, it has significantly changed the cash balance anticipated for fiscal 2025. So you see we were almost at zero with $100,000 of cash reserve on a $30 million budget, but now we have about $1 million in cash at the end of fiscal 25. And then fiscal 26 and 27, again, we were anticipating a deficit in those years and a negative cash balance. We still are. We anticipate about how many encumbrances we're going to have at the end of the year, and those are open orders. We will begin reviewing those. I believe will be lower than what we anticipated for this year, but I think the assumption is we're always at about $100,000. And then finally, the unreserved balance, that takes into account those open encumbrances at year end. The next slide shows you the trend in revenue, in expenditures, and in our ending cash balance. And this hasn't changed. So this continues to show revenues staying relatively flat on the blue line, expenditures increasing, and then our cash balance decreasing. The next slide is an important one because it shows ending cash balance in true cash days. And again, the board does not have a policy that requires a minimum cash balance at the end of the fiscal year. Our district has maintained about a month worth of cash balance on hand. So that had traditionally been about $3 million on a $27 to $30 million budget. Last year, because of some transfers that we did after fiscal year end, it was even lower. But this year, I believe we'll be back up at about 15 days of cash at June 30th. And then, again, due to the reduction in staffing for fiscal 24, I think we've improved that picture a little bit as well. But keep in mind that the recommendation for a district is to have 60 days of cash on hand. For a district with our budget of $27 million in fiscal 24, that would be about $4.5 million of cash at fiscal year end. And right now we're running between $1 million and $1.5 million. So we're significantly lower than what the recommendation is. And again, it hasn't been something that we've maintained in the past either. So, it's a recommendation, but it's something that, we track fiscally to make sure that we are in compliance with state guidelines. Again, the next slide shows our revenue sources, and this has not changed since the beginning of the fiscal year either. So you're seeing that 56% of our revenue comes from state sources, whether that's foundation or other state sources. We have casino revenue in there. We received about $130,000 in casino revenue this year, which is about on track with what we forecast and what we have received in the past, other than the years during the pandemic. The state foundation, again, is something where we may see some changes next year depending on the state legislative decisions that will be happening in the next month, and how the state rolls out the Fair School Funding Plan. So the Fair School Funding Plan is the formula that they're currently using. They started it in fiscal '22. They've continued in fiscal '23. They're funding it at about 33% of its phase-in, and depending on how the state's economy looks, they can adjust that level. So we may see additional state revenue if the state makes some changes in how they fund the school funding plan, but the school funding plan is a formula based on enrollment. So how our enrollment trends look will determine how our funding from the state looks. In addition, our next major source of revenue is local sources. 44% of our revenue comes from local sources. That's primarily our real estate taxes. So on residential properties, commercial properties, or industrial properties and public utilities. So those tax rates maintain a consistent collection of revenue year after year, because of House Bill 920 that doesn't allow for valuation increases to increase the amount of revenue that the district receives. So what it actually does is reduce the millage for taxpayers as their property values go up. So it spreads out the revenue a little bit differently. But again, these numbers, this chart, remains very similar to what we saw back in October, and nothing has changed since then. Again, a change to state funding may impact the red portion. If a levy passes and the district is able to collect additional property taxes, that may mean the purple box will change a little bit. But overall, this is our breakdown. The next slide does the same thing with our expenditures. Our district is primarily salary and benefits, and I always stress that we are a people organization because 82% of our expenses go towards wages and benefits. That includes teachers, support staff, custodians, bus drivers. The food service team is not included in this. They are in a separate fund. This is expenditures in our general operating or general funds. Our benefits, 25% of our budget goes to benefits. We pay health insurance, premium, 85% of medical and 90% of dental premiums for employees. We pay 14% contributions for their retirement. There's a workers' compensation insurance that the district pays into as well, to make up that 25%. The rest of the budget then just really dictates a mere mention as service contracts are contracts for our students who receive special education services, and of course our facilities contracts for utilities for our buildings and operations, and then any additional support contracts for the district. So finally, to circle back again and keep referencing what we did in October when we took a look at this forecast for fiscal '23, we knew that there was some deficit spending and we needed to address that. So back in October, the board started having conversations about the 6.9 mil 5-year renewable current expense levy that was on the ballot on May 2nd, 2023. That meant new revenue of $2.7 million per year, beginning with the full collection in fiscal 2025. There would have also been a half collection in '24. And again, I gave you some information in your packet to show you how that would have impacted the district had that received voter approval. But it did not. But the district, the Board of Education did take that action to try to address the deficit spending. In addition, the district has looked at a staffing audit and an enrollment study to determine if our workforce really matched our declining enrollment. And as a result, there was a reduction in force of 15.5 FTEs for an estimated cost savings of just under $1 million. And again, that applied in the salary and benefit categories for future fiscal years. It was carried out in this forecast beginning in fiscal 24 and then continued in 25, 26, and 27. And then again, this board has taken action on an employee severance plan for eligible employees. We had 182 employees who were eligible for a plan that allowed them to retire possibly a little bit early with an incentive, but allowed the district to also replace their salaries with the cost of new employees coming onto the district, presumably at a lower place on the salary scale. And our projections were about $2.5 million in cost savings over the next 8 years. Because again, the assumption is that eventually in 8 years, those folks would have retired. Now, you don't see that cost savings in this forecast because, again, we want to be conservative in our forecast. We don't have the numbers yet for who is applying for that employee severance plan. The deadline for enrollment is June 22nd. And then following that, employees have a 7-day review period where they can change their mind. So we really won't know until the end of the fiscal year how many people have decided to enroll in that program, and then we can determine our savings going forward from there based on who and how we're replacing them. So again, you don't see that reflected in this forecast, but it will definitely be reflected in an October forecast when those people retire. Finally, I just wanted to put up some key takeaways from this update. Again, there's still some uncertainty around that state budget bill. It'll be a biennium budget for 24 and 25, so once it does pass, we'll have a better idea of what our state funding will be for the next 2 years in this forecast. So in October, we'll be able to nail down the 24 and 25 projections. And again, it's dependent on that fair school funding plan, how our enrollment looks, how our enrollment in certain categories of funding looks, and then what the priorities that the state gives to different categories in that fair school funding plan. The next item too to mention is the federal ESSER funds. That's your elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds that were provided from the federal government to school districts during the pandemic. Those funds are wrapping up. So we've done a lot with those funds. We've provided summer school services. We've provided some additional positions. We've been able to do a HVAC facilities project at Brown Middle School with a complete air filtration and make that building a lot healthier and cleaner for our students. And those funds, as we continue those projects, are encumbered and are reserved for specific purposes now through September. So we'll see, again, once we do our final reports for that money in September, if we need to carry over any money into fiscal 24. But it's looking like there will not be any new ESSER funds. There are a lot of opportunities for new grant funds, however, on the horizon. The state has funded a number of safety and security grants just in the past year. And our district has been the recipient of a lot of funds that have helped us to upgrade the building access and building security. And also to leverage a lot of things that we would have eventually needed to purchase out of our general fund anyway. So now we've been able to find grant funds to make that happen and to make it happen faster and probably in a more robust way as well. There are also talk of additional grant funds for preschool, so we can see some additional funding in that area, and again, an area that we already received some grant funding for, so that'll help us leverage those as well. The next item on there is the deficit spending and the cash balance. I just keep bringing that to the forefront because that's what I really think the board needs to consider as to what should drive their next actions. So again, last year in October, our action plan as a result of seeing the forecast was to start talking about a levy and the timeline for that. So to know that the deficit spending has been reduced because of the reduction in force and has the opportunity to be reduced again with the employee severance plan, but we are still seeing deficit spending in the next 4 years. And we do need to take some actions to address that. Again, looking at your cash balance, that's your key line on your 5-year forecast. So what actions will we take to correct that negative cash balance? Otherwise, it does trigger some state oversight. And I guess the other thing, too, to mention about the deficit spending, if the board decides to take action similar to what we did in the past with the levy, to know that the deadline for the November election is a filing deadline with the County Board of Elections of August 9th. So our Board of Education would need to take 2 actions at separate meetings to pass resolutions to be prepared to file by the August 9th deadline to be on the November election. And then finally, next steps. So just starting that conversation about how the board will continue to address the deficit spending and even the receipt of some of those new grant funds. So I open it up for any questions, or I also have this on later on the agenda for approval from the board. So if there's any discussion or approval after the motion to approve, we can discuss it then. But thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent update?
Before I get into my superintendent update, I just want to take a minute to pass on some sad news. Earlier this week, one of our custodians, longtime custodian John Webb, passed away. And I meant to say something earlier with the moment of silence, but if you could think about him later today or tonight at home, he was a valued employee, and I know a lot of people knew him very well, and it's really sad. So, just wanted to mention that. The second thing is I've been ceding my time usually to the building principals, but I'm going to start first with a piece of paper that I've given you in front before I let Mr. Lane take over. And I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the OST score reports and trends so far. I cannot say enough about the great work that Lee Smith and the building principals have done to move this district forward academically. There's still a lot of work. We still have things that we need to work on. But if you look through this chart, you can see a couple of things right off the bat. Grade 4 math went up 13%. That's incredible. Grade 5 math went up 10%. Grade 5 science went up 22% and exceeds the state average at this point. If you go down to grade 7 math, it went up 10%. Grade 8 ELA was up 8%. Grade 8 math went up 8%. Grade 8 science went up 11%. If you look on the back, grade 8 Algebra 1, this is pretty impressive. These Algebra 1 kids in 8th grade, they're honor students, but they're taking a high school math class, all right? Last year, the pass rate was 79, which is not bad. This year, it's 93%. That is a 13% increase in Algebra 1 at the middle school level. That's an incredible amount of work by those kids, by those teachers, by the building, and by Mr. Smith. And not to be outdone by the 8th graders, the high school, 9th grade, they increased their scores by 30% in Algebra 1. That's like those two, Algebra 1 in 8th grade and high school algebra, both exceeded the state average. We did not have anyone who exceeded the state average last year. So this is super impressive. Now there's other places that were kind of like in the yellow. We need to worry, all right? Grade 4 ELA, they went down 3%. However, it's the first time we've been using the new CKLA Amplify curriculum. There is a learning curve involved in that. all of the different grade levels that went down, they went down, 3%, 2%. There is a learning curve on that. So we've got grade 4 ELA, grade 5 ELA, grade 6 ELA. All of those are still grade 6 math. They've increased or decreased around 1 or 2%, but we're doing really well in there. So I kind of have them yellow, because we want to do better than 3% when I've got 30% in a different category. Another one that's interesting, and I just want to point this out because you know how I feel about this. If you look at high school American history, we increased our scores by 3%. That is not a lot. But if the students took the American history test, took the American history course at RHS from our teachers, 58% of them passed the test. We have a lot of kids that take that history test that are educated somewhere else. All right? So if a student came from another district, only 13% of, or EA or LEAP or some other area besides us, only 13% of those students passed. So we are doing a great job with U.S. history. Now, the ones that I'm worried about, I'm not going to lie, we have to figure out, we have to dig into what's going on. Grade 7 ELA, we had no change at all, just 42%. With last year, 42% this year. It's their first year with CKLA, but to have no change. You either expect some change up or some change down a little bit, but to have no change, it's just kind of a weird thing, I think. And then if you look on the back, high school ELA 2 went down. We just have to dig into that. They shouldn't be decreasing in scores. High school biology, they stayed the same, but again, another interesting piece. If a student took the biology course at Ravenna, 44% of them passed the test. That's not great, but it's better than what it is. And if the student came from another district, only 4% passed. So we're doing what we need to do here. If we could just keep our kids here and educating our kids, those percentages would increase. And then the last one is government. Government went down this year. However, if the students had taken the government class at Ravenna, 66% of them would have passed. Instead, a lot of them take it at Maplewood, and only 51% of those kids pass. So our goal is to really work hard at figuring out how we can make sure our kids are being educated by our teachers so that we can own our scores. So there is absolutely some places that we need to work, but to have 3 exceed state average, to have a 30% bump in Algebra 1, I mean, those are scores that most school districts do not see in 1 year or 2 years. So I'm really proud of that work. So I know I took some time away from you, John, but, I just had to brag a little bit. Because, you get beat up on the report card constantly, right? I'm sick of the report card. This should help our report card. So, but as part of my update is always a building spotlight. And so tonight we're turning it over to Mr. John Lane, who must be so tired because he's packed 100 days of activities in the last 5 days because of the seniors. So, Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Dr. Hebert. I'd also like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to thank the board as well for taking part in the pizza parade that we just had. That is definitely a nice event that came about because of COVID, and we're definitely not going to get rid of that anytime soon. It's a great event. The kids look forward to it, and I appreciate you taking part in that. As Dr. Hebert mentioned also this morning, we actually took, for the first time from my knowledge, at least when I've been through the district, we took all of our seniors, we had them show up today, they all put their gowns on, and we bussed them to Brown for a parade. They went through West Park for a parade, they went through West Main, Williard, and then we circled back through and did a spin around Ravenna High School. And it was a great experience. Former teachers got to see their former students. The little ones around our district got to kind of see what the ultimate goal is, to have that gown on someday, ready to walk across that stage, and we look forward to doing that tomorrow night. I want to just go through and share a few highlights from this year. It's been a great year here at the high school. It's been wonderful for me to be back up here. I spent 3 years here, 2013 to 16. It was great to be back up here, especially with this senior class, because I started down at Brown when they were in 6th grade. So I got to watch this senior class go 6th, 7th, 8th. We took a little break from each other for a few years, and then we're back together here for their senior year, and it's been a pleasure. On the English language arts front, just some highlights. This year, we dove into using the centralized reporting system, which is provided by the state. Basically gives us an opportunity to give the students kind of a practice with the tests. I talked to as many students and staff as possible and said it's kind of getting you game ready. You know, when your coach has the day before a game, they might say, okay, we're going to have a pregame practice today. We're going to go over scenarios that we're going to see in the game. Same thing on an academic front. We've got to put our students into a game time mindset. This is what the test looks like. This is the rigor of the questions you're going to see. And so we use that CRS system. You can see some of the stats there. We showed a lot of growth throughout the year. Really happy with those results from reading informational text. Those 300 students that took those checkpoints showed growth in 4 of the 6 standards. So that's something to build on. And as Dr. Hebert mentioned, we've got still plenty of work to do, but we've got a good foundation to start on. Over to the right there, you can see our English language arts students went into interventions once a week, those that needed those interventions. If those CRS tests were showing that they were struggling and they weren't showing growth, we wanted to get them into intervention. So you can see some of the work that they did on the right side, and I included a couple quotes from actual students from our school, just kind of giving some positive feedback as far as how they felt that the CRS tests and the teachers utilizing them helped them to be better prepared for the testing. Also from ELA, we had the Rotary 4-way test speech. Students took the principles of Rotary International, the 4-way test, and they applied it to a current ethical issue. Kirsten Seaman took away first place with her speech, Autism Speaks. We also had Ryan Hall, Ben Raynone, and Maddie Arts also placing in that. So we're very proud of our students and the work they put into that. The Ravenna High Times newspaper has really made leaps and bounds this year. 1,300 views on the new website. We added QR codes all over the building, and each time they put out a new edition, we told our students all they have to do is take out their device, scan that QR code, and boom, they're on the Ravenna High Times. Some new features this year. The students worked on adding news from around the world, business section, politics, science, tech, crossword and word search, so the kids could have some fun with that. They revamped their opinions page, and they had a student life page where they kind of dove into some of those issues that some of our students may be facing in their lives. On the world languages front, Spanish students in their classes learned a great deal about Hispanic culture, traditions, celebrations, and contributions of Hispanic Americans to U.S. history. All of the world languages took part in their annual World Cup soccer game down at the stadium a couple weeks ago. So that was a great event for the students there. To kind of piggyback on what Dr. Hebert said earlier, we're very proud of the work that our math department did this year to improve our test scores. As she mentioned earlier, we went from 20% passage last year to 50% passage this year. Furthermore, if you dive a little deeper into the numbers, you see that 70% of those test takers earned what's called the 2+ score, which basically just means they don't have to retake that for graduation purposes. So 70% of our students, they don't have to worry about Algebra 1 as far as the graduation component. Our fundamental Algebra B students, 67% of them passed. That's an increase. At the bottom there, you can see Hispanic, students of color, 18 out of 21 passed, so an 86% passage rate on that. We're very proud of all the work that our math department did. They worked very hard. Our students worked very hard throughout the year, and it definitely paid off. Also from math, our mathematical quantitative reasoning class. This is a group that comes together and they're tasked with using critical thinking and reasoning. They are given real-world situations. They have to make decisions that are relevant to daily life. They have to combine problem solving with modeling to analyze those real-life situations and then devise solution strategies. So this year they worked on creating catapults as kind of a task that they had to perform. And they used their skills to come up with miniature golf courses as well, kind of using all their skills from mathematics to come up with the proper formulas that they would have to come up to create those. In science, science had some great progress this year using that CRS data, as I talked about earlier. Those biology benchmark tests were given to our students throughout the year, again, with the goal of getting them game ready for those state tests and get them a little bit more prepared. STEM Trivia Challenge, we received an email a few weeks ago and decided to get this out to the kids. Basically, the students could go online as part of STEM class and take part in this National High School STEM Trivia Challenge. And before you know it, we started getting emails that you've got a bunch of your Ravenna High School kids that are in the top 10, and this is nationwide. Our students dove right in, and they wanted to be part of it, and we were able to get a $250 grant just because so many of our kids went online and took part in this. Some of the other highlights from science, some great experiences throughout the year. They designed solar stills to distill salt water. They examined the motion of balloon jets. They went to the Great Lakes Science Center. They built projectile launchers to hit targets. They visited Cedar Point for Math and Science Week. Some other kind of hands-on. They designed model dog sleds to come up with how could we create maximum efficiency. And our environmental science class worked on planting, growing, and harvesting potted vegetables right here in our RHS courtyard. So that was a nice addition this year. On the social studies front, we had Ohio History Day projects. This was Honors American History. They took part in this. They conducted research on primary, secondary sources, and they wrote and presented arguments in a creative fashion on that. Reacting to the Past was just done here over the last couple weeks. This brought together students from both U.S. government and U.S. history. Basically, the goal here was to take on the role of somebody from our nation's past, one of the founders, and they had goals. They had to communicate with each other. They debated issues that may have been debated in those times, and had some real intellectual conversations about those issues. Great engagement, and the class sessions are actually run by the students themselves. So in this whole process, when they were role-playing, the students basically ran the classes those days. Really proud of what Honors Ravenna Civics has been able to do. This year, our Ravenna Civics students, again, those are senior students, they participated in 400 hours of internships with our community partners. They spent time at City Hall. They spent time with Portage County Treasurer and Recorder. You can see on there the Haven, Main Street Ravenna, PMHA, Chamber of Commerce, Reed Memorial. Our students were out there in the community getting those valuable experiences as interns, and they were able to do their showcase recently, which I know a lot of folks were able to attend here last week. So it was a great year for Ravenna Civics. On the visual art front, very proud of Nevaeh Rill. She completed her senior portfolio for the district art show that we recently had. She was the only student to represent RHS in the Scholastic Art and Writing Competition. She was awarded a silver key for the drawing of the boot there that you see. And just really proud of Nevaeh and what she was able to do. Vocal music, our choirs performed 15 times this year at various concerts throughout the year. Really proud that they were recently at an adjudicated event, and they received a superior rating by the judges. And just a wonderful year for our vocal music students. They just had a concert here a couple weeks ago. Instrumental music, this was real fun. A couple weeks ago, we had the steel drum band, drum line from West Humber Collegiate Institute in Ontario, Canada. They were right here on that very stage along with our students. You can see that picture. We had a full school assembly for this event. They rehearsed together, and they put on a little concert for all of our students. And the best part of it is, I had students coming up afterwards kind of asking questions about the music program. Can I take part in this? Yeah, absolutely. Let's sit down, let's talk about your situation, and let's see if they saw the students up on stage, and they said, I want to be part of that. So it was a great experience, and it was a great day when we had that performance. Service learning, 5th annual day of service, just about a week and a half ago. Just what a great day. My first time being part of that this year. 38 partner sites, students from Ravenna High School all over the community, and it was just a wonderful day. The Record Courier had a great article on it. I can share this presentation with the board, and you can click on that link there, and the article from the Courier pops right up. It was a great day on May 12th with the day of service. Just a couple other fun things that took part this year. If you know of the TV show Cupcake Wars, Mrs. Mazel brought that into the classroom as part of the family and consumer science classes that she teaches. They ended their semester with Cupcake Wars. Their task was to make the cupcakes, make the sets to go along with them. She invited a bunch of faculty down to kind of sample some of the cupcakes, and the students did a great job. They did a great job building the sets for the cupcakes as well. So it was a great experience for our students. Next up, our intervention specialist did a great deal of work with our students. This is from our resource room students. Basically, they created a curricular service learning project. It entailed writing, it entailed technology, they had to research for part of it, there was math and measurement involved, and basically they constructed those animals that you can see there. But they had to take all of those aspects together, the tech, the research, the mathematical measurements of it, to making sure they could put those together. So it was a great way of taking skills from multiple disciplines and putting them towards a single goal. Finally, here we go. Students worked in the community and learned the value of giving their time. This was some volunteer time that our students put at the Center of Hope. This is from Mrs. Crislip's classroom. So it was a great opportunity for our students to give back to the community, and they did a great job with that. So this just gives you a little bit of a highlight of the year. It was a great year, kind of packed a lot into it. Really looking forward to tomorrow. Got rehearsal in the morning, early with the seniors. Tomorrow night, have the culmination of a great year with commencement down at the stadium. The weather's going to be beautiful. Looking forward to it. So I thank the board for their time tonight. Thank you.
One thing he's leaving out is last year the graduation rate was 87%, and this year we're closing in on 95%.
Yes, that is correct.
So that's
yes.
pretty impressive change.
Absolutely. Very pleased with that. All right. Thank you very much.
Report to the board, Maplewood report.
This is pretty much like what we're doing tonight, approving limited year contracts, 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts. They approved supplemental and tutor contracts. They hired some subs. They adopted the fee schedule for their students. We reviewed textbooks of the list that we will adopt next time. We adopted the preschool parents handbook, and we approved an overnight field trip for a medical assisting student, Sarah Penix, who is competing in the National Skills USA in Atlanta, Georgia. And then we also went with the electric energy company, for schools, I believe it's called, and I know we're doing this tonight, the same company, the ENGIE company. And so that's my report, pretty much like what we're doing, end of the year stuff. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation report.
Yes, 2 events coming up on Friday, June 3rd. Parks and Recreation is presenting their summer celebration at City Park from 5 to 8. They're going to have family games, food trucks, crafts, a movie at dusk, and other activities. So please at least share that with your classes to let them know that there are events coming after school ends. Also, the 6th annual Chalk Fest will be downtown Ravenna, where people can sign up, whether adults or kids can sign up to paint on the sidewalk and do artistic kind of things that will be judged later. And all of that information is on the Parks and Recreation website. Thank you.
Report to the treasurer.
Thank you. Tonight we have a consent agenda and then the standalone 5-year forecast. So part of the consent agenda includes the approval of the meeting minutes from our regular business meeting on April 24th, our special meeting minutes from May 10th. We received 2 donations this month for the day of service at the high school, one from the Ravenna Area Chamber of Commerce and the other from the Portage Metropolitan Housing Authority. And just a note that those two organizations have supported our day of service for several years. So this is ongoing support, and we really appreciate that. In addition, you have the financial reports for the month of April. You have a bank reconciliation report, and we are in balance for the month of April. There's a budget status report that shows really where we are year-to-date through April, and it's probably not quite as updated as the 5-year forecast. So if you see discrepancies, that's why. The cash position report, you have a copy of that shows you the cash balances in each of our funds, and the check register report to show you each check that we paid out to a vendor in April. And then finally, the fifth item on the consent agenda item is an approval of transfers, and this is the time of the year when, as we prepare for the end of the fiscal year and we prepare the final appropriation measures to the county, we start moving some funds around, and a lot of these are obligations that remain in place and we do year after year. So, for example, the stadium fund is used to pay debt service payments towards the stadium loan. Now, this should be the last payment because we've completed that loan payment for the stadium. So we made our last payments in fiscal 2023. This should be the last time we need to transfer those funds. The next transfer is from the permanent improvement fund to the maintenance fund. And again, those are PI funds that are specifically collected from that 2006 levy that are designated for the maintenance fund at the high school. It was passed at the same time the board went for the bond money to build the high school. So it was part of building and maintaining the high school. The third transfer is from the PI fund to the debt service fund. And again, that's because we use permanent improvement funds to pay down debt on our buildings for 2 tax anticipation notes, one for boiler maintenance and one for stadium and track and field maintenance. Again, both of those were paid off in fiscal 23. So our debt picture has substantially changed in fiscal 23. So these transfers, you may not see them again. You've probably seen them for years, but you won't see them again. The OHSAA transfer from 22 into our general fund, those are funds that the district collects every time we sponsor a tournament or we host an athletic event that may or may not include Ravenna athletes. But the district receives a reimbursement for our expenses for that event. And once we've reimbursed everybody who's worked for that event, if there's any funding remaining, the district transfers it to the general fund really as a facilities rental cost. The next transfer is out of our debt service fund and into our general fund. That was the tax anticipation note that we did in January to cover the short-term expenses before our property tax payments were received in February and March. We allotted money in the debt service fund to pay the interest, and we did not need that $23,562 to pay the interest. As soon as we received the property tax money, we paid back the loan, so that reduced our interest costs. And then finally, the West Main MD class fund, there was a couple dollars remaining, and I believe that class is no longer there, so they've folded that money into the West Main Principal Fund. It'll still benefit the students and staff at West Main.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
And then finally, our last treasurer item is the approval of the May 2023 5-year forecast and the assumptions that I presented earlier.
Motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes. Reports and recommendations of the superintendent and other administrators?
I know you guys down at the end just can't wait till I get through all this. Okay. So I have several business recommendations. We have a consent agenda to begin with for 1 through 13. They're all business recommendations that deal with service agreements, either with the ESC, KidsLink, Safely Home. The KidsLink and Safely Home are places we use to help some of our most vulnerable students. Children's Advantage, we have a person and a half that we work with here in the district. Julian and Grube to help with the audits. Full Spectrum Marketing, Howard Technology, who we're using to help phase out the non-working LCD projectors and bring in the brand spanking new panel TVs that Jay got at some red line discount. We love him right now. And the electricity supplier. So 1 through 13, those are all those types of agreements.
Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
All right, next we have personnel considerations. First is the certificated. Earlier, we discussed a reduction in force. These are the teachers that will be placed on the official reduction in force list, suspending their contracts for next year.
Motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Next is the consent agendas for number 2 through 10, which is still dealing with our certificated teachers, dealing with resignations, leaves, extended school day contracts in the summer, or extended day contracts for some of our employees like counselors who work extra days in the summer, summer school, kindergarten kickstart, those types of things.
Motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Next, we have supplemental contract, 2 people for extracurricular and co-curricular advisors for next year, Mr. Farhat for Key Club and Ms. Nolan for leadership.
Motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Next, we have classified, and Mr. Tantamonia, this is the food handler, so you would not be part of this vote. It's to accept the retirement, resignation, or employment of food handlers, cafeteria workers, as listed.
Motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Abstain.
We continue with the classifieds, and this is the rest of the consent agenda is numbers 4 through 13. It lists resignations and employment of custodians, aides, and subs. It also lists the 2-year continuing contracts for some of our classified workers, as well as some summer school and ESY contracts for the summer.
Motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
I'm done.
Next is recognition of the public.
We have none.
Discussion with student board members of the month. Mr. T,
Yes.
would you like to take over for us?
Well, let's start with our Brown student, Brown Junior or Middle School, and that is Terrell. Terrell?
Yes.
Okay. How's your school year going?
Going phenomenal.
You liking it?
Yep.
Okay. And it doesn't say which grade you are in now. Is it 8th?
Yes.
Okay. So you're coming up here next year.
Yes.
Have you any thoughts about that? You anxious to, or somewhat reluctant?
I'm just happy to be able to move on to high school. I get to play sports, get to play high school basketball. Really my dream.
Are you playing basketball now in age?
Mhm. Yep.
Is that your sport?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what other things did you do besides schoolwork?
I really did really help teachers out with getting paperwork usually for what I did during the school year. Usually help Ms. Stefanczyk set up her dojo shop, which she does for students. I would say about like 6 times a year for she gives out prizes, candy, chips, drinks. She does a lot for the kids.
Okay. When you're on stage tonight, helping introduce and reward the Game Changer students, is that a positive experience for you to see that some kids are really being, hopefully modeling good behaviors for other kids in the class? I think the value of it is not just to say you've done a great job, but to set a tone in the class that other kids might try to model and do better. Do you think that might be the case?
I think that is the case. It really shows how we as a community has grown and how we have really stepped up our game from past years. It will show later grades. It kind of, with the role model, kind of shows the kids what they should be doing in following years, and it leads up to them maturing for later grades down in their career.
Okay. That's nice to hear. Nice to hear. What was your favorite class this year?
Science.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any reason why? It's just something you're into?
I really picked up an interest earlier this year for science, and that really shows throughout this whole school year. I got advanced for science for this year. Really happy about that.
Great. Good. Good. Did you feel any difference between last year and this year at Brown as far as the old atmosphere?
Yeah, I feel like we all, my class especially, we all matured and grew up respectfully around each other. We were more respectful and kind to each other. And that's what I really seen throughout this whole entire school year. We all really respected each other, respected our boundaries, really had a fun time. And that shows during our events that we were able to go to in this school year, which I'm very happy about.
Do you have anything that you would like to ask us about?
Are the school hours are getting changed for high school?
Pardon me?
Are the hours getting changed for the high school?
The hours? Yes, you're going to have to go to school like 40 hours a week now.
Do we get paid?
To get paid?
Yeah.
No.
Hope we do.
Can you answer that better?
Yeah, the school hours are going to change, school start times and school end times, a little bit for everybody except the high school, which is a significant change, but research shows that high school kids need more sleep. So you all are going to start at 8 o'clock next year.
Is that good or bad?
That's good.
All right. We'll get back to you in a minute here. Let's talk to Trinity a minute. What grade are you in?
I'm currently a junior.
A
11.
junior? Okay. Do you think you'll pass on to be a senior?
I do, yes.
All right. Tell us about your school year.
I've had a pretty good school year. Junior year's definitely been the hardest year I've ever taken. I do take a lot of rigorous classes, so that might be a little bit of my problem. But I've still made it through, and I've had a good time. I did student ambassadors. I'm in NHS. I play volleyball. I've had a very good year.
Okay, good year. What are you going to do next year? You going to still take a whole bunch of those challenging courses, or are they available?
I did hear a couple because a couple teachers getting cut in the budget that we're not doing CCP in the building for a couple of those classes, but we can still take them on campus, which is what I plan on doing, is doing CCP. So yeah, pretty intense classes.
Sounds like you're up for them, though.
I am.
You take a lot of homework home?
Surprisingly, no. I find as long as I do my work at school, it's not difficult to not have work to take home. We're given like the study halls, and we're given the RPT, and we're given the chance to go ask for help if we need it. So I don't find it difficult to finish my work at school, but that doesn't mean I never have homework. I just don't have a lot of it.
Okay. Favorite class?
Oh boy. Probably Mr. Wonderly's American History class this year. I've really enjoyed that. One of the things we talked about was our Constitution reenactment, and that was a lot of fun. It was very informative, and it kind of gives you a different view of how difficult it really was, and I really enjoyed doing that. We went to a We the People competition. We prepared for like 3 months speeches on certain topics we were given, and we had to sit there in front of actual judges, lawyers, and give these speeches, and we actually placed very well. I think my group got the highest ranking out of the Ravenna groups. I think we got like 3rd or 4th in total out of like 15, so I think we did pretty okay, especially because it was my group's first time ever going. And with the We the People reenactment, I'm actually really disappointed because I heard we're not going to get to do that again next year because we do it with the sophomores and our classes aren't going to line up. And that's really disappointing because it was one of my favorite things we did in that class.
Well, maybe something will change. I don't know. Never know. It sounds like it was a great challenge for you. It was well met. So You've got one more year, and what happens next after that?
I don't know what college I want to go to yet, but I know I want to go for business administration and just work in the business field.
Okay. Do you have a school picked out that you kind of think about?
I really like Akron's business program. Kent's is also very good, and I haven't really looked into out-of-state colleges yet, but I'm looking into that, but they are very expensive.
Really? I know, they're very expensive. Do you have any brothers or sisters in the school district?
Many. I have my little brother, he's a freshman, Aiden Thompson. Then I have 2 little sisters. One of them is at Brown Middle School. Her name is Armani Thompson. My other little sister, she goes to St. Pat's. Then I have a 5-year-old little sister who is also in St. Pat's. I have another little brother who is at the middle school. His name is Taz.
Wow.
And then we have a 3-year-old who is not in school yet.
You remember them all. That's great. Terrell, do you have any brothers or sisters in school?
Yes, I actually do. 2 have just started preschool, Torella Strickland and Jenna Strickland. And I have an older sister, about sophomore. Her name is Toni Maurice. She just moved here to Ravenna from Kent. From Kent, yeah. She just started her first sophomore year.
Questions? Somebody? Okay. Pardon me?
I said you did a good job.
My last question is, you were elected, we'll say elected, but selected to attend this tonight to be part of the school board. And I know you didn't get to vote. We all voted because the business part of it, we have to approve certain things, policies, and these resolutions. This is not the first time we've heard them. So we didn't just vote, yes. We've had time to digest this, read about it, and do some research. The information we get on them is much more detailed, so we actually know what's going on. So I would say that we probably, in most cases, don't have arguments, but we do disagree. And that's the part, we're all elected officials. We're elected through votes in our community. The ideal part of that is that we all represent something else, a different background or whatever. I was raised in Ravenna, born and went to school in Ravenna. There's some others here that were also raised and went to school in Ravenna, and there's some that aren't. that came from different places and maybe moved into the Ravenna community. And that's not just a city, that's our township too. We're all one community. But we ran for election. We received the most votes, so we've served on the board. Some of us have served quite a while. Others tend to, I think overall in school boards, probably people tend to do 1 or 2 terms. Some of us, like Joanne Seaman down there, she taught kindergarten down there. When was that, like in the 1800s? Or when
Oh,
was that?
yeah, definitely.
Okay, but she's been on the board over 20 years, haven't you now?
Yes.
And that's a lot of elections and a lot of care. We're all here not for the rewards. The rewards come with you. You're our reward, okay? Because we would like to see every student in school successful. And that's what we try to do. We try hard. You've had great opportunity, and I'm glad you came. Someday you might want to run for school board and put your civic responsibility to work for you, so I hope you do. Any questions or any suggestions?
I have one suggestion about something.
Okay.
I know it's been a concern for, I don't want to say it, I'm going to, for the students that try to do well in school. It's been kind of frustrating for some students because I know there's a rule that like, oh, you get 50% on everything. Like you can't really, I mean you can fail, but you don't do an assignment, you get 50%. And that's really frustrating for some of the kids who like genuinely try. And I know a lot of people in my classes have voiced like concern and frustration with that. And I was just putting that out there that is frustrating for some of our students.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. Do you both have way home safely? Okay, that's what I need to know. All right, we'll go ahead.
Next is informational items. Graduation is Tuesday, May 23rd at 7 p.m. at Portage Community Bank Stadium. Rain date is Wednesday, May 24th. Last day of school is Thursday, May 25th. Last day for staff is Friday, May 26th. Next Board of Education meeting is Monday, June 6th at 5:30 p.m. at Ravenna High School. We do have need for an executive session.
I do have to read this.
Go ahead.
An executive session or private session of the board is controlled by the Sunshine Law and may only be used for special purposes outlined in the law. No action can be taken by the board during the executive session, and we will be using it for number 2 and number 7 on your agenda.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Tantamonia?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
so we'll know actions will be taken.
Motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call.
Mr. Trevor, Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?